Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Chase Jarvis. I'm moderating this sucker. First of all, can we get a round of applause again for the peeps we got on the stage? This is pretty insane, huh? So the topic today is really the role of advisors in startups. And so I'm sure there's a whole cross-section of you in the crowd that are eager to be advisors, but I'm guessing, and I'll probably find out through the course of the discussion, that there are a lot of you who are startups looking to land some folks like are sitting next to you up on the stage. The quality of folks that we have up here need no introduction, but I want to walk through. They're all incredibly established. They've done big shit in the world. And Tony, we'll start off with Tony Conrad, venture capitalist. You probably know him from founder of About.me and a million other things that he's got going. Gary V went from wine guy to media whirlwind. Am I right, Mr. Tim Ferriss?
Jets fan. He's a Jets fan. You got to get that.
That's right. Jets fan. I forgot to say that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Tim Ferriss. He advises a lot of startups, and in addition to that, you know him as the best-selling author of 4-Hour Everything. And J.R. Johnson down there, CEO of Trippy. He also has had an exit, an $85 million exit, unloaded something to Expedia, and is back at it again, right? Cool. So I think it's the structure of this thing is like 45 minutes of us rapping, and then we will open it up to Q&A. But without further ado, I'm going to fire a question that just whichever of you want to stand up and not stand up, but whichever one of you guys want to beat your chest and say, like, for the folks out there who don't know, what the hell is like a celebrity advisor? And I think Tim wants to go. You guys think?
Well, all right, I will call myself an advisor because I think probably 14 minutes into my 15 minutes of fame as any kind of micro-celebrity. But an advisor is someone who takes an equity position in a company, in this particular case a startup, in exchange for different types of services or expertise. And that could range from everything from the very get-go, let's say syndicating financing, which I did with TaskRabbit as an example, to getting better terms with VCs, so just the inclusion of that person, helping them to get better terms with financing, to product design, UI, distribution, meaning PR, and user acquisition. And those advisors can take many different shapes and forms, and oftentimes those advisors will also be investors in the companies.
So, when you're putting together a advisory board, if you will, Tony, like, is it crucial that you have just this plethora of rock stars, or how do you look at them? Is it just to put in a press release, or what? Like, what's? Talk to me about this.
Also ask him why I wasn't able to be an advisor in About.me.
You guys can arm wrestle over that.
We're gonna change that. We're gonna change that.
Yeah. Late stage advisor.
Yeah, I mean,
Super late. Hey, AOL, call me.
I think our approach has been somewhat documented, but we'll kind of go through it a little bit. So genuinely, we kind of just stumbled into it, and the reality was this was I'd done a couple other startups and had success, and so there were a group of people that wanted to put money into the company, and I couldn't accommodate that, just to be kind of clear. I didn't want to raise any money, and ended up raising $400,000 from True Ventures, because I'm a partner there, and a handful of others. And so it was a mechanism for me to get people involved in the company by giving them shares instead of taking their money. I know that sounds a bit odd, but it just so happened that, the beginning, we were 4 people, we had 26 advisors, which is 6.5 per employee, which I always laughed about. But, so I did, to me it was just about getting a good crew together, people I wanted to kind of roll into this startup with. And the benefits, though, became very apparent quickly. When a Kevin Rose tweets out that he's set up an About.me page, that has an impact. When a Tim Ferriss does the same thing, it has an impact. So we're incredibly fortunate, fortunate to get them.
Great. So Gary, as you're on the receiving end of these like a Tony approaching you. So what are some of the ways?
Well, not Tony, but.
yeah, you're on the receiving end of Tony not approaching you.
Yeah.
But you have been approached. You advise a number of companies and as an investor as well. What's the best way, like, for you to be approached? Because I think that's probably a huge question out there, and they want to know, like, hey buddy, nice to meet you. You want to be advisor?
Everybody's super different. I was talking to some friends this weekend about this. First of all, I think that a lot of people that are lucky enough to be in a position to have somebody approach them, the far majority of them, luckily not the people on this panel, which is probably why I decided to join it on this subject matter, but a shocking heavy percentage of the people that are lucky enough to be asked to be advised are being douchebags about having any filter to how you should be approached. You know, being mad that somebody comes to you at South by to pitch you an idea where they want to give you equity is a straight jerk-off move. I'll take an approach any way you want to bring it. I'm flattered that you're interested. You want to email me? Cool. You want to tweet at me? Awesome. You want to put me on your fucking pin board? Cool. I think that, you know, you want to stop me while I'm walking? Great. I mean, I think that people take themselves too serious. I'm super flattered anybody's interested. I would highly recommend being as squeaky as a fucking wheel as you can be, because, you know, it's shocking how many things I've done after the fourth or fifth ask. I'm sure, Tim, you know, you've probably had that. I mean, you know, you've got to try. I mean, Saka. I ran into Saka in LA on Monday, and he said to me, Chris Saka, if you know who that is, super fancy schmancy guy with a beard. Anyway, he said to me, he said to me, he took his phone number off of lowercase, and he's been stunned how lame the hustle has been to get to him since. It's been good for him as a filter, but he's blown away that nobody wants it. You know, if you want it, you've got to try everything. You know, I mean, don't get into like scaring people. But for me, I can't be scared. If you're like standing outside of my apartment in New York City, holding a cup of coffee and saying you want to pitch me, I would just say to myself, that's a fucking badass hustle. and then I would figure out if I like it. You know, there's been a ton of times, and I love hustle, that I've loved the hustle, but the product sucks shit, and I didn't invest. So it still comes down to a lot of things. But I think what it all comes down to overall, and the biggest way you need to think about this, is this world is built on brand equity, right? And advisors build brand equity. Some of them execute. After a while, I started realizing, I used to feel bad. I stopped for about a year taking advisory because I thought I was stretched too thin. And then one day I woke up when like I would say no, and they're like yes and no, and I talked to a couple of the entrepreneurs. I'm like, wait a minute, this is the modern day endorsement deal. Yep. Like this dude or this lady just wants to put my name against this, leverage that, and for what I'm really getting in return, it's quite minor. Now I have to be careful. I'm sure you deal with this even more than I do. I turn down probably 50 books a week to give a quote to. Yeah. Not because it's hard or I'm a bad guy, but because I don't know the person, I don't know what the book's saying, and if I put my endorsement on it, I don't want to be embarrassed. So, but I've come to realize there's a lot of ways to do it. There's certain companies that I do a lot of product advising for. There's certain people that I do marketing. People find out what people's strengths are, but we live on brand equity. Apple is the most evil company in the world right now, and we all fucking love them because they positioned their brand equity. Tony Hsieh has told such a great story of delivering happiness. We don't give a fuck that the shoes cost more. We just love that it's free shipping. Like, once you build brand equity, we really start looking at the world differently. The key with these advisors, what Tony did perfectly with his execution, was the collective brand equity of Veronica and Tim and Kevin was so important. The awareness that they were able to do in a world where everybody's a micro media company was able to bring attention, and then the product was fucking good. Now you're on your way.
You just built a.
Yeah. Thank you. See ya.
Whoa. And we're done.
Let's give it up.
There's some standing room in the back. For those folks that are coming in late, there's a couple seats left in the back. Yeah, it'll be tough, but someone will move over so you can sit down back there. JR, you recently put together a syndicate with Trippy. What's the strategy that you use? Because Gary just told us how it looked from his side, but what about you? Like when you're building this, like is there 10 slots and you're just trying to plug them in?
I'm really glad that Gary, when he first says, approach me, come talk. Yeah, it's like anybody. And then I'm like, Gary, do you know how hard it was to get in front of you? Like, I probably had, you said 5 or 6, I probably had a dozen times that I needed to, from different angles, from everybody, getting in front of Gary, because we didn't have a personal relationship before that either, which made it really difficult. So
make the ask. Make the ask right now.
I think explaining how you approach these people.
We're in.
I'm in.
No, but tell us.
But he hustled. Like, you know, I mean, it's hard. You know, I'm super fortunate. When you're getting 2,000 emails a day because people care, it's hard. I mean, there's only so many hours in a day. Yeah. And unlike when I first started coming here, I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, Misha. That allocates an enormous amount of my time. I wanted to. And plus, you know, the Jets are struggling with their off-season transactions, so that takes up a lot of my time. And so, you know, it's hard.
But how did you build it? Are you just grabbing all you can grab? Are you trying to just get names? Or are you strategic about it? So tell the world how you're thinking about it.
So when we set ours up, when I really modeled it after what Tony did with About.me, and when I started thinking about building building Trippy out this way, it was the first guy I talked to was Tony. So I sat down with him and I asked him how he set up his advisory board, how he went out about getting these people, and kind of what and he said he had 26 guys, and he's like, 26, get 100 if you can get 100. Like, the more people you can get in, the better. This is, you know, such a great team environment to get you know, not just one person, but get a whole team around it was something that he really pushed. So we kind of looked at it, we stepped back, and then we looked at our market of who we wanted to go after. And when he built out About.me, it was a really tech-focused early adopter group that he went after. We're in the travel business, so we needed to go with something a little bit wider. And we started looking at different lifestyle categories. So we have our tech early adopters that are in now. Tim was the first guy that I called to kind of start the process rolling. And Tim had written about my previous company in the 4-hour work week, so we'd kind of known of each other over the years. So we had sort of an understanding of one another when I came and approached him right out of the gates. And then once we started there, it's like there's a lot. Once you get one person engaged and involved, and Tim came in a big way, not only as an advisor, but he also wanted to invest, which is something that a lot of the advisors that I pitch them just like I would an investor. Because like Gary was saying, this is their brand. So they need to make sure that they're associating themselves with something that they're going to be proud of. And you know, as an entrepreneur that I'm bringing these guys in, I respect the hell out of that. And I'm not going to screw this up because it's their names that are attached to it now. So then after that, we started looking at some different lifestyle segments from like food and wine. So Gary was on the top of our list for the wine side of it. From the food side of it, you know, you think of Anthony Bourdain and Andrew Zimmern. It took months, but we got those guys on board and really stoked to have them. Started looking at like the fashion space. So we got this woman, Rachel Zoe, who's a stylist and kind of a fashionista. So she's on board as well.
You did some music stuff too, right?
Oh yeah, and then so we started looking at music. It's like, okay, yeah, music. How do we bring somebody from the music business in? And that's a weird lifestyle segment because music and travel, it doesn't really fit together that well. So it's like, who am I going to get? Like somebody that's like, you know, on a boat or doing whatever. You know, it's really not the. It's
Jay-Z up in this mother.
It's not the guys that really kind of embody this like this travel experience. So started looking around, and Jason Mraz was a guy that we're like, dude, he's vegan. You know, all the yoga. He surfs. He travels. He loves to tell stories, and he's got 10 million Facebook fans. So it's like, okay, that's who we're going after. So it took a while, but we ended up getting them, yeah.
So you said something interesting in there that I want to sort of dovetail, which was you're throwing around like advisor and investor, like pretty casually there. So explain to us like how there's a little bit of a crossover there, right? Talk about that for a second.
I ended up getting a lot of the people on our advisory board are also investors in our business. And really the only ones that are not investors in our business are the ones that came in after we closed our initial round. So I would go and pitch the advisors just as if they were an investor. It was very similar deck that I showed to Tony when I tried to get True to invest in our deal. And so yeah, we'd go to them because they are, even though I would go to them as if they're investing their time and their expertise, not necessarily their money, but that's even more important to them. So we treated the exact same way as we would with an investor pitch. And it just so happened that a lot of them, and just kind of the way that the equity structure sets up around an advisory role, when you do a lot of advisors like Tony did with About.me and like we did, you can't have a significant equity stake for any one individual. So those that got really excited about the concept also wanted to come in and invest to increase their piece of the business.
And there's a little more clout behind that, right? Like you put your name in someone's name in a press release. That's like, you know, are they gonna be putting their feet up on a coffee table somewhere?
But let's just think about how you leverage these people, right? So, you know, day one, you're gonna open up your site, and the first thing you all are gonna you're gonna hear about.me because Kevin tweeted it out or Gary tweeted it out. And you're gonna show up there and you're gonna see 10 very high profile people that you recognize that are part of this community. And that's going to encourage you to say, okay, there must be something interesting going on here. I'm going to sign up. And that's where you start to really seed virality. in the very beginning. Later on, they become the face of your campaign. We've done billboard campaigns. So how does that translate? I'm pretty sure like people driving down 101 and they see Kevin Rose's photo, of About.me up on a billboard. I'm sure they don't pull over and like sign up. That's just not really possible. But you know what happens? Kevin gets pretty excited about it because even he thinks it's cool to be on a billboard.
Kevin's not here to defend himself.
And Kevin, and I don't think it was Kevin or Veronica Belmont, I think we did one with her. She ends up tweeting about it. Yep. Right, and putting it out there, and then other people in the community go, "Whoa, one of our people's on 101 billboard. How cool is that?" And you just really kind of leverage it in a very subtle way, but it's good. It's a quid pro quo. It's good for Tim, right? Let's think about it. I'm going to project here a little bit, but I think it's good for you to be a part of the About.me advisory board, which has a lot of cachet. Cash. It shines favorably on you. You're with a group of people that you respect. And have great reputations. By de facto, by being part of that for Tim, that's good branding, right?
So let me jump in right there because I'll use Tim as a specific example. Unlike Gary, who you can send a carrier pigeon to and he might be an advisor to you, you actually talked earlier about like wanting to get to know some of these people over time. There's still hustle, so I think Gary's point stands. But what you were talking about, like I did the first time I saw Tim. Hey, that you're thinking in your mind maybe this guy's a badass, but you didn't pounce on him and say.
Yeah, I'm a little different than Gary. Nobody pounce on me afterwards, please. Everybody pounce on Gary. Gary wants to be pounced on. All right. I think the big change for me, having done this for a while. Is that entrepreneurship has become a vocation, right? It's just like coming out of college choosing that you're going to be on the track to be a doctor or be an accountant or whatever it is. There's so many people now, thinking this is what I'm going to do for the next 20 to 30 years. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be in this ecosystem. I'm going to work in tech. And if you take that approach, I think you can slow the fuck down, right? I don't think you have to pounce because I don't really think that's very effective. I think what you do is you start, you bump into Tim, you meet him here quickly, and just be cool and like meet him again and remind him, and that you met him, there, and eventually you'll get to a point where you're just kind of hanging around there and you just have a conversation, and at some point in time you'll be able to figure out how to get Tim involved. That's what I did, even with Kevin. I've known Kevin for a long time, and I was still very timid and shy about the way I approached him. I didn't want to pounce on him because I knew everybody else did. So I found my moment. We were in Hawaii at the lobby conference. And
this is sounding very romantic.
It was very romantic. It actually was. It was sunset, and no. But I got a chance to like talk to him about my product, why I thought it was important, why I was doing it, why it was real to me, who was involved, and then I asked him. I said, is this something you'd be interested in? He said, I was hoping you would ask, and I was like, great. So
that does sound very romantic. I was hoping you would ask. Sorry, you were just touching me right there.
I just wanted to touch you. No, I wanted to connect a few dots here that I think are important for people who are aiming to approach advisors. So the first is something JR said, which is that he pitched them as he would investors. This is really important because I see a lot of very informal advising pitches, and you would never pitch an investor the way some people pitch advisors. And you have to recognize that for the people who are perhaps the busiest, the people you want to contact, time is their most valuable non-renewable resource. So you actually have to do a better job of pitching them in many cases than you would an investor who has a $100 million fund to distribute. And if you have numbers, if you have traction, if you have other people involved, you have to use those numbers, you have to use those stats. And you can approach people in different ways. I'll give you a number of examples, and these might give you suggestions for approaching the people you want to. And I wouldn't necessarily go after the big brand name people. You need the right fit. So I would think of advisors the same way you would think about hiring a VP at your company. And you can use lower equity amounts. We could talk about numbers. So it could be like anywhere from 0.1% to 0.25% if you're going to be collecting a broad portfolio of people for, let's say, primarily PR purposes. But you might also go after 2 or 3 people and give them 1% to 2% if you want them to have a very specific product role. And let's say TaskRabbit, I first met at Facebook Fund. Right? So they're one of the portfolio companies at Facebook Fund. They requested a meeting. They knew it was a good fit. If you look at Evernote and Shopify, 2 companies that I advise, they both got to me through my users. And it wasn't because my users were in any way asked by those companies. They liked their products. And so I think a very effective way of particularly to get to advisors who aren't already known as advisors, is to have your product become known to them before you reach out to them. And then in person, so Toby sealed the deal in some respects by meeting me as a speaker at a conference. We met in the green room at a Ruby on Rails developer conference. In person is the least crowded channel, but you have to do it in a calm way. Well, I suggest doing it in a calm, calculated,
Not right here at
organized
the
way.
end of this session.
This would be the worst, one of the worst places to do it.
So don't do it.
In any case. But you have to take the pitch seriously because you may only get that person for 5 minutes. So you want to have your stats.
All right, so let's say you're JR, you're Tony, and you want to approach a Gary or a Tim, but you don't have access to those channels. If I'm trying to put myself in someone's shoes out there, they're going, yeah, but I don't know anybody like that. I don't know. So you just mentioned, maybe you think about it in the same way that you would hiring a VP. So either one of you guys, what's that sort of headspace when you were an entrepreneur? You want to get some advisors, you want to get some traction and some clout, but you're really not. My recommendation is try and invest some time into being at the right places so it happens naturally. But why don't you fill in the blanks?
Yeah, Tony, I really like Tony's style of just be cool, man, be cool, just take your time, meet the people. That's hard to do though. We need something done right now, and if I don't know all these people, then what am I supposed to do? If I haven't taken the 5 years to be cool and just chill with people and let them get to know me, it's
the burn rate.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I agree with that completely. But in the situation where you don't have those 5 years, it comes down to hustle. Like Gary was saying, and I hustled my ass off to get all of these guys. Tim wasn't easy to get in front of. Him was really tough to get in front of. Gary was really tough everybody was really tough to get in front of. And it was one of those things there's no, it's more art than science, I guess. This was finding everybody in my network who could get me an intro, doing everything that I could, scrambling around to, figure out who knew who and who could get me in front of these guys. And then when I finally got there, I didn't want to screw it up. So that's why the pitch was pretty, it had to be pretty tight.
There's also a really great way to get advisors, really secret great way, which is have a great fucking product, right? So my big concern sitting here and I'm listening, which is rare for me usually when I'm on stage, and I'm saying to myself, this is great, but what I'm seeing a whole lot of, and again, I do kind of like people who take the moment. I am a little bit more out there. I will jump on Spreecast and engage with people or email or Twitter. I am a little bit more, I think there's a lot of truth. Listen, as a lot of you guys know, I always talk about running the marathon. It's not, don't do the 19-year-old dude move and try to close on the first move. I agree with a lot of that stuff. At the same token, there's no right answer. It's kind of, there are times where you've got to take your moment and you've got to grab it. So it's a mix. It's how you feel. It's the vibe of the room. Sometimes you got to look at the person's face. If Tim's now running to go to an airplane, that's tough, right? But if you can tell the person's hanging, that might be right. So you've got to feel that out.
It's a very human.
Absolutely. The big problem right now in our space is that everybody does think that they're an entrepreneur, right? And so all of a sudden, a lot of people who didn't sell lemonade or blow pops or CDs and had that entrepreneurial spirit, all of a sudden they decided they saw a movie and they want to wear sandals and a hoodie and they can do it too. And I've never seen over my whole life, and especially in the last 5 years, what I've seen the last year, which is some really bad, really suck ass, you fucking suck as an entrepreneur peeps in the game. And so I give that a lot of thought. I think you need a good product really matters. And the other thing that I don't know how you guys feel about this, we're in that little bubble zone of the idea moment now. I'm really not interested in idea. Coming to me with I got this idea. What do you want, a fucking cookie? Everybody has an idea. I have 97, I've come up with 13 ideas since I've been sitting here, right? Show me something, tell me what you've done. This whole idea pitch stuff is a waste of time for, in my opinion, so.
Yeah, so let's say I'm running to an airplane, right? And somebody comes up to me, the way, and I've had this done that has actually turned in, and it's become something, is they're like, I know you're really busy, here's my card, my company's growing 40% a month. Take a look, reach out to me if it's interesting.
Yeah.
And that can be like Tony said, it's cool. It's not like, this is perfect for you. It's amazing, money back guarantee. Like it's not,
There's only 4
it's
hours.
not a hard
There's only
sell.
4
It's just
hours
like,
left.
here's the fact. I know you're busy. Check it out if it's of interest. Would love to chat. You know?
Or you can have Tony's chill, cooler surfer personality and be like, yo man, 40% a month here.
Same shit, but slower.
I wanted to add one more thing, which is that you shouldn't necessarily look for the biggest name, all right? And you shouldn't necessarily look for the biggest audience. You have to look for the right fit. And to give you an example of how doing that incorrectly can backfire, if you're going for what you perceive as a celebrity advisor, it is absolutely critical that you ask yourself, where is my startup going to be on this person's list of priorities? If you look at, let's just say, the book publishing world, startups are the same, and you look at celebrity books, Sylvester Stallone, blah, 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 a lot of them absolutely nosedive and fail.
Sylvester Stallone.
Because it's like the number 27th thing on that person's list of things to do. Right? So it doesn't matter who you have necessarily on your advisory board if they don't bring much to the table. A few tweets are not going to fix a broken business model.
No way.
All right, so I think advisors are most useful to add gasoline to a fire that is already burning. You can't depend on them to make or break your company. And the best companies, the companies that I work with who make the best use of whatever resources I might have, they are surgically precise. They have very specific asks. They know exactly where people fit into this puzzle. And you have to have that clarity. And if somebody comes to me, let's say, or Gary, and they don't know they want to play in the startup game, because of course the equity is only worth something if it ends up being redeemed somehow via an IPO or acquisition, they should know who their top 5 VC picks are. They should know the partners that they want on whether it's their board or to invest in their company. Because you can do that in an afternoon of sitting online. And if they haven't done that due diligence, I do not trust them to figure out a complicated or even a simple business model in a world where there's so much noise and the cost of creating companies is so low.
So you got to do some work, actually, it sounds like. You have to do some work to understand if you are a good fit. If you have a nail polish company, you're not going to call Tim. You might call Gary. I don't know.
But I think that's the right point. I think that, a lot of us have our careers on record, right? So like, I was one of the companies that came to me and actually invested in it. I was the first investor in Birchbox, which was a makeup company, right? But it was retail. I built a large retail business. So like anytime there's a retail thing, all these direct-to-consumer products like Warby Parker and things of that nature, I get a lot of that deal flow, and that makes sense to me because, and that excites me too because I know I can help. Like I know in 1 hour coffee, it's not my first rodeo with retail. I'm thrilled when people want to use my brand equity and want me to, put it out there, but I don't get as excited because I know I can't affect it as much because Tim's 100% right. It's not 2007 anymore. One tweet's not changing the world. And so I think that doing an audit on the 100 people that come to mind and then understanding what their backgrounds are, Googling them up and really understanding every aspect of their career can really, really, really matter. Any book startup, should go to one of the great authors of executing sales, like, retail, I think that has a lot to do with it. I'm always surprised when people go I think that big name thing is so spot on, Tim. I think auditing the people's career can be a big factor for you.
Yeah, so people will know that you have retail experience if they do the work.
I've
So
sat
I'm telling
with-
you guys to do the work.
But don't undervalue the tweet. I mean, honestly, seriously, don't undervalue
That needs to be
the tweet.
tweeted right now, probably.
My experience, right, and the thing that where I kind of just went, duh, wow, that was brilliant. That was luck, but that was brilliant. What we did was when I woke up, I realized that my advisors collectively had 23 million Twitter followers. But let's just let's say half are spam. That's, 11 and a half. And let's say there's another, let's just call it there's 7 clean, no overlap, 7 clean. Just tell me today, where do I get a reach of that? And get it multiple times a day.
Into somebody's pocket.
That's right. It's amazing, right? It is amazing. So to me, the perfect intersection were people that understood how to build brand identity online, took it as something that was very important to them, and at the same time, de facto, because they took it, importantly or seriously, had a massive reach. And it's that cumulative effect that was just incredibly powerful
And
for
that-
us.
that comes from
we
the guy who
grew to
invented
over
it.
1 million registered users on About.me much faster in half the time that it took Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Foursquare, and I can just keep naming them. It took us 232 days to get there. 1 million doesn't sound like a big deal maybe to this audience because we're living in the world of tens of millions and whatnot. Trust me, to get to 1 million registered users in 232 days, that is an amazing accomplishment. And that was because of people like Tim.
And that's brand equity and that's endorsement.
Absolutely.
And what I've been paying attention to, again, because of my retail background, I'm really now starting to look to invest in CPG-like companies, like a bottled water company or like, you know, coconut water's done, and so I'm looking for like weird random fruits. Tim, actually, you travel to weird fucking places. I need your help. You know, like a mango steamer.
He said
all
weird
this
random
stuff.
fruits, and then he said your name. That's
You know, so
Gary wants to be a fruit.
but if you look at like Rihanna's deal or 50 Cent for vitamin water, things of that nature, the tech deals are quite cheap for endorsement in comparison to that, and the collectiveness of 7 to 12 of them in this world today. I mean, celebrity has been is important as ever, but there's never been more Z-list celebrities that you add up to equal a B or a C, and that really matters. And I think there's a strategic way, but depending on what kind of percentages you're giving away, to add up to something quite powerful.
Yeah, but you know, honestly, if I had a chance to take Rihanna today,
You'd take her. Let's move on.
I would. But if I could take Rihanna or I could get Tim and Kevin, I'd take Tim and Kevin, for sure. Absolutely. The one thing I've learned, I grew up in a world where I didn't believe that you could build a brand and build a business in a bubble, right? An echo chamber. Everybody remember there was an article that was written 53,165, and it was written by an incredible venture capitalist. I won't mention, I won't embarrass him because he's outstanding. But he had this belief that, hey, you know what? You get the TechCrunch crowd to adopt, be early adopters on your product, so BFD. What's it mean? You know what I mean? It's just like this little bubble. It's this little echo chamber. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't cross over. And I kind of I take a step back now and I think, no, that is actually what you want. That is the power. Because Tim has followers in India. He has followers in Indiana. He has followers everywhere, right? Malik has followers everywhere. Veronica everywhere. And so the more you get that echo chamber talking, right? I mean, really blow it up inside that very tightly focused, kind of tech ghetto. The more it actually broadcasts itself out on the edge.
And Tony, they're willing to do work on Tim's behalf.
Yeah.
When you go to the super celebrity shit, it's like there's a lot of people like my mom follows Lady Gaga, but what's
Yeah, Tim doesn't even know this, but Tim.
my mom also follows you, Tim.
Veronica Belmont, when she would say to people, "Hey, check this out," I made my profile. For a while in the beginning, she was driving the number, the most people that were converting on About.me were being driven by her. Number 2 was Tim, number 3 was Kevin, for the longest time, and it was 80%, those 3 people. 80% of my early audience, for those couple weeks. And then it changed, right? Then the composition changed very dramatically. But
That was a spark.
it was like the spark. I was just watching, there was a great TED talk, I can't remember what it was, but there was a great TED talk about virality. Well, I remember what it was about, but I don't remember what it's called. It was about virality, and they were just talking about, Friday, that song, whatever, Rebecca Black, and it just sits there. It's out there for a long time. It's like you forget this. It's been out there for like 9 months. And there's just nothing. It hasn't changed anything. There's no blip. And then there's a moment where, Tim or somebody says, "This is hilarious," or Gary says, "This is hilarious," and there's your spike. That's the moment. And every single one of these, he went back and he correlated every one of these things, these viral phenomenons, they all start with somebody like that had a massive follower base on Twitter.
That's what happened with your book, right? Scoble, actually, your first book, Scoble pimped it. He's like, "I'm going on a plane, I'm going to read this book." And then that was the initial.
Yeah, and it depends on the type of endorsement as well, not just the person who's making the endorsement. In the case of Scoble, Robert, it was astonishing to look at the comparison, just the old world, new world, because I was on the Today Show, and God bless him, but I was on the Today Show, and it barely registered a blip on Amazon. I mean, the book went up to maybe top 20 for an hour or two, and then Robert very nonchalantly said, yeah, I'm going on vacation, I'm taking this book with me. That was it, really. And it went to number 3 or 4 on Amazon, just stuck for I think,
Forever.
like a day or 2 or 3. And that's calculated on an hourly basis. It's astonishing.
So what if Scoble went on the Today Show? Whoa. I would
pay to see that. I would love to see Robert.
That
on
would
the
be
Today Show.
insane, Robert. I'm sure you're listening in your ear while you're doing 4 or 5 other things. So we'll put you on the Today Show soon. I'm going to shift gears here for a second. We're going to take the kid gloves off because I want to know about some mistakes that startups have made in trying to leverage advisors. You certainly have some experience.
Yeah, I can tell you, first of all, getting celebrities, they cost way too much money. You know, celebrities come in, they're like, yo, I roll at 4 or 5 points in your company. And I'm like, 4 or 5 points in my company? Like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to give you 4 or 5 points. How about 1/10 of a point? And be happy that you get the association. Yeah. So don't do that. You know, I'm not down on celebrities. If there's a very, you know, like, hey, like Kim Kardashian, you know, with, you know, Shoe Dazzled, it's clear, you know, she's the brand, right? So that's a different, like, she's a founder, in my opinion, you know, in that. But, you know, what we're talking about here, these, you know, big advisory groups, you know, keep the equity really, really, really low, right? They're not, in a lot of these cases, people aren't doing it. I mean, everybody wants to make money, you know, for the most part. But they're doing it because it's a fun group of people to be a part of and whatnot, and you can't lose sight of that. So in our case, 26 advisors, we gave away 2.4% of the company. That's less than 1/10 of a point per person.
Who got jerked for the 0.5?
And there was a handful of people that, you know, had a slightly different. Tim had a slightly different from some other folks in the mix, but you know, just keep it common sense. You can't give away your whole company on this. And the second thing, people have a tendency to set these things up in a very complex way. You know, I bet you guys this happens to you all the time. You're going to be an advisor, and it's going to be a 2-year, you know, it's a cliff plus 2 years vesting. And I just said, that's just bullshit. Like, I want to manage that for 1/10 of a point. You know, if Tim gets involved and he doesn't do anything, okay, I lost 1/10 of a point. You're like, I just vest everybody 100%, so it's clean, right? And you like that, right? I mean,
that's
it's just clean.
Yeah, and the reality is the vesting isn't.
It doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's like if you take the time to sign somebody up for that, either you have to be willing to fire advisors, which you never see happen, at least I haven't really seen it happen, or you just trust that it's going to be pretty front-loaded and you just vest it all.
Also,
and by the way, so one last thing, if you
I'd
define,
let you all go.
oh no, I'm
you
going
guys should
first,
keep
baby.
talking at the same time.
If you define, yeah, he's a big man. If you overly define what it is you want Gary to do for you, Gary will do exactly that and nothing more.
Yeah,
Right?
this is important.
What you won't get from Gary
This
is
is
the
a very important
serendipity
point.
of adding his about.me page to his email signature.
Yep.
I would have never thought to ask Kevin Rose to do that, and he did that. Do you understand how impactful that is?
Huge.
And what an endorsement. It says, it's not just he's endorsing this, it says he actually uses it. It means something to him. There's so much stuff that we got from advisors that I would have never dreamt to have asked. So just, you know, I know I can do this surfer dude stuff, you know, whoa, just be cool, let it all happen. You know what, honestly, let it all happen.
Yeah.
You know, be front and center, talk,
from
make
our
sure he knows
standpoint,
there.
A point, you know, 0.25 is a little different. A 0.10, you know, has to be given to you up. I mean, the endorsement itself is worth that to me. Like vesting on that small of equity, I've never vested on an advisory 0.25. I want it straight up front. It's kind of like, you know, the milk and the cow thing. Like, you know, I want it, you know, I'm not giving you this until you give me that, right? Like, I just have no interest in, you know.
I didn't understand the analogy.
Let me give you.
What are you giving the cow to get the milk?
Let me give you a better one. It's the hot chick thing from a guy's perspective. Like, you need to give me up the equity. I'm not fucking you unless you date me a little.
Well said.
Is that better?
Just to.
Was that better?
Yeah, beautiful.
I was trying.
And
I was trying.
I'd like the camera to go this way.
Yeah. We're pan left. Pan left.
I want out.
Go
Just
ahead,
to
Timmy. Go ahead,
to
Timbo.
explain a couple of terms for those people who may not be familiar.
Fucking when you.
So don't have sex with the cow until they've signed the paperwork. So very oftentimes what will happen, particularly if someone's coming from outside of Silicon Valley, it's not a big deal, but there's a lot of standard paperwork in Silicon Valley that gets rewritten for no reason, and then ends up it ends up taking a lot of time. This is actually, I've had advisory deals not come through because I've had somebody like a lawyer who's never done a deal like this try to create it from scratch. And so it's like, all right, see Exhibit A, there are 2 pages of rules and responsibilities for an advisor. And I'm like, for that amount of equity, I'm just not going to take the time to feel like I have an axe over my head for 20 to-dos. I would have done more, like you said, had you given me more latitude to decide where I can add the most value. But if you're dealing with larger amounts of equity, then you would have, let's say, vesting on a monthly basis over a period of 1 or 2 years. So I've done both types of deals. But certainly for the smaller amounts, keep it simple. I mean, you can eat up a lot of time on the legal stuff. Yeah, you just don't need to. If you trust them enough to approach them and you've done your research and you know they're a good fit, then keep it simple.
Real quick, Tim brought up a great point. Paperwork's important. I passed on a ton of stuff because I was like, wait a minute, the lawyer fee I'm going to incur here is not worth this small of a transaction. So I actually think that was it's what you're good at, like the actual details.
And actually, you know what?
Seriously,
if you get somebody, just ask them, do you have paperwork? Tim was great, man. Tim sent me you sent me the paperwork, and I thought, this is pretty good. I'll just use this. Yeah. And then I just use that for the next person, the next person, the next person. I didn't have any legal fees at all. And it just worked, you know what I mean?
No,
but somehow Tim owned 47% of the company. It was weird.
No, I know how to read my docs. I definitely know how to do that.
On a surfboard.
That is a way to save time, though. I mean, for those of you who may want to do advising, once you have a good agreement, just say, I have this type of paperwork. It's been done before. Let me just send you the docs.
There's another thing. Aaron, is that you? So Aaron Battalion is sitting in the crowd right now. He's a co-founder and CTO of Living Social, right? So like there's a group of us that got a whole lot of cred and bubbled up, and and a lot of the people that you used, and they're the common names. But I think there needs to be some better digging going on. If you're thinking about retail, kind of that model, there's nobody better in the room right now than Aaron, who's sitting right there. He can help you dramatically more than any of us. And I think that people are staying, as much as this hurts me because I'm getting plenty of awesome deal flow because of it, I think there's levels below. There's a lot more companies that have been successful recently in the last 3 years. You need to dig, and really find some of these people who've really driven this. And there's like 43 gaming companies that have been, had micro levels of success. Everybody's gonna run towards Zynga and things of that nature. There's like a ton of people that can help you in the space from other aspects. So I think digging a little deeper, doing a little bit more homework, understanding our marketplace really does matter.
Yeah, that was really the point that I was trying to make about the nail polish, not necessarily the retail part of it, but there's you have to look a little deeper, and you want to align yourself with someone who's actually going to use your product, who's going to care about your product. And I think, JR, you've done a great job of that. You have selected a bunch of people that travel the world for your travel site.
Well, and we set it up the way that Tony advised, of really low, not a lot of teeth in the advisor agreement. It's like, I want you to use the product and provide feedback. And we know that by this group of advisors that we have, by using the product and provide feedback, it's going to help us figure out what the right product is supposed to be to reach their audience and to reach the people that follow them and look to them for advice. That's awesome. So we've already evolved the product substantially based on all that feedback. But secondly, we've got, it's just easy for them to go above and beyond anything that we would ask of them. And that was one thing that was, also, when you're going out talking to people, the biggest thing that I saw, like the right advisor versus the wrong advisor, the right advisor, every time they really want to know exactly what's expected of them. The equity, like all that stuff, like that's not even talked about. That's almost an afterthought. They want to know what the product is, what the vision for the business is, and then what's expected of me as an advisor. That was the number one. So I would say, like, all of the guys that I had the best experience with, that's what they were focused on. The folks that are not necessarily involved with our business as an advisor right now, they were focused on some other things. So that was a key learning that I had.
I think when you go back to some of the themes we've talked about in real life, I was committed to not speaking at South by this year. I've done like 3 keynotes in a row. I didn't want to, felt like I didn't have a whole lot more new things to say. I've been very head down building VaynerMedia with AJ, and I really didn't want to talk. And I really wanted to be home actually yesterday. And then, Jared didn't ask me for anything specifically, back to all the things we talked about. He asked, and I was like, you know what, I've been pretty busy. I haven't done a whole lot yet. You start, when you deal with good people, good things happen, right? I felt an obligation. I feel like I've been too head down with Vayner. I haven't done a lot in certain places. Let me do this because it brings exposure and other aspects. And so, like, I mean, that is really, I'm sitting here based on what Tim brought up earlier, and you have to think about those things.
And that's why we packed the house.
Yeah, because you can see I crushed it. What up back there?
No. But JR, let's talk about one of the things that you and I talked about backstage a little bit ago was that you're pretty active in engaging the people that are on your advisory committee that want to be active. You guys have conference calls and you're providing them with information, enabling them, so to speak, to kick ass for you. And without that, you're sort of, I don't know, you guys probably, I advise on a couple folks, if they're not giving me information on how I can help, sure, I'm always looking, but you guys do a really great job. So when you talk about how intentional you and Melissa are about going after folks.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of work too. So yeah, you mentioned Melissa. It's pretty much, the majority of her time is spent kind of
wrangling cats.
These advisors. And Tony, you talked about how many guys you had on that were helping you kind of monitor your advisors. It takes some time. There's some hand-holding, getting things set up initially that takes place. So it's not something that just happens easily without any effort. There's definitely some effort there. But for us, the value in it is so worth it because just the product feedback alone that we get from it, it's like, if you have a good advisor who really, so Tim, as the example, he understands his audience. He knows that when I show him something, he goes, my guys aren't gonna like that too much. So it's like right there, I know that there's just a few 100,000 people that I know aren't gonna like what I'm showing Tim. It's like, that's fantastic. Like, otherwise I'm gonna put it out, I have a few 100,000 people, either hate the product or never engage with it. It's like, that just helped me, and that saved me so much time right there, so we can iterate and we can start working on kind of what the next evolution of the product's gonna be. And the stuff that we just rolled out end of last week,
Which is beautiful.
2.0. Thank you very much.
It's beautiful.
This was stuff that from the first meeting that I had, like when we sat down with Kevin Rose, the first meeting that I had, the first thing that he said to me was like, hey, I want to be able to contribute when I don't have a trip that I'm planning right now. It's like, I want to do something when I'm not actually planning a trip. It's like, okay, cool. It took us, 6 months to finally get that thing built and out the door, but that was the seed that he planted there, and that started us working on that because he knew that that's something that all of his followers and all of his fans would want to see as well.
Beautiful. We're moving quickly through time. I'm going to open up to questions in the not too distant future here, but one question, again, kid gloves off. What kind of a startup can't you help?
Oh, there are tons of startups I can't help.
Yeah, well, just give us some examples. We only have a couple minutes, so give me a couple examples.
Anything that
You guys
doesn't
think about
anything
that.
that doesn't
I can help
overlap.
everyone.
It's real simple. Anything that doesn't overlap with an area I know and other companies in my portfolio. So I try to assemble a keiretsu, which is a Japanese term. My companies in my portfolio of startups are all intended to help each other and complement one another. And if it doesn't fit into that picture somehow, it's going to be very difficult.
Beautiful. Gary, you said you can help everybody, but what about people that you're already helping in
I mean,
the
from
competition?
my standpoint is the reason I actually said I can help everyone is because my experience long before I came into tech was I built a business. And so operations always matters. And so I've had I had an amazing 2-hour meeting here with Katya, the founder of Birchbox. I sure know nothing about makeup or even the demo of what they're interested in that. I sure was yelling about scaling her business and understanding what the market is doing. And so for me, I feel comfortable because a lot of my thought is culture within the organization, operations, efficiencies, things of that nature.
Got it. And Tony, as a VC, what kind of companies can't you help?
There's a lot of companies I can't help. If I'm not excited about the person, to be honest with you, our persons.
So it's not about ideas, it's about team, right?
Yeah, at this
you hear
stage.
that over
at
and
this
over and over.
stage,
At a VC stage.
Yeah, at a VC stage, especially where we're investing and where you guys are getting involved with these companies. If I'm not really psyched about the person, then it's just not going to be a great fit. I'm not going to be motivated. I'm not going to be excited when their email comes in. I'm not going to be excited when the text comes. I'm going to be bummed, actually.
Sure.
Cool.
All right, so I'm going to open up to questions, and I'm going to pull a little ninja
There's a
move here
mic in
real
the
quick.
back.
There's
I
one
see
back
people
there.
raising their hands.
Let me double check something. We're live streaming, right? So why don't you, any of these guys, actually I can just use mine at Chase Jarvis. If you're in the world and you want to ask a question not here, I'm going to at Chase Jarvis. I'll take a peek at my Twitter thing here because I'm the only one who's got one. But let's go deep into the crowd here. So show of hands, who needs a question answered? You guys all know everything? At the back, the blonde woman back there with your hand up in the air? Oh yeah,
Hi,
you don't look like a blonde woman, but we'll go with you.
I used to be with a company that we provided a service. So we grew it from 5 guys and just barely making it to a $5 million company in 3 years. We then used that money and then we were like, well, we don't want to be a client list, let's make a product. So we did that, and it slowly and surely it did grow, but it was a slow process. Well, now I'm with a different company and we're following the same model. We provide kind of a similar service, and now we're making enough to start creating that project. My question is, do you want to stay that route? I mean, obviously it was a lot better to keep it privately owned and create that product, and then now that it's doing well, try to go after some funding or whatnot. But do you recommend doing that in the early stages, or kind of waiting how my first company did and waited a few years actually to actually starting going for funding?
Okay, so let me steer that. Actually, I was thinking.
Thank you.
Tony, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, not everything should be. So there's a big difference between something that should be venture funded and something that shouldn't. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a real business, right? There's lots of real businesses. I see stuff all the time and I think, you know what, that's actually a good business. And actually can be a pretty good sized little business, $10, $20 million, and the founders can make, $1 million a year in profits, a couple $1 million a year in profits. So, I think that, before approaching, venture guys where you're playing for a very different outcome and a very different game, you should be really certain, that you feel good about this. If you're hesitating, you're thinking I can go a couple of years, then, listen, time is on your, time is a good thing. Listen, if your business is interesting to me today, it's because it's an idea. If your business is interesting to me in 2 years, it's because it's a big-ass business, right? Potential. It may not be big revenue already, but it's got really big potential. Cool. So I always advise people, like, it's not a game. It's this mentality we have. It's like, oh, I'm starting a business, I'm going to go get VC funding. Like, why?
All right, let's keep it on advising and stuff if we can. That was a really good question and a brilliant answer on Tony's part. Yep, there's a line back there. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. This was a wonderful panel. My name is Stephanie Burns. I own a company called Chic CEO, and we're a web resource for female entrepreneurs, kind of a knowledge portal for women starting businesses, and it's really kind of fun and super sassy. And I was just wondering, super sassy, all of you, you're men up there, and I was just wondering if you have any advice or any women that you think would be appropriate for us to approach in an advisory role.
Yeah, I'll go on this one.
Yeah, take it, Tony.
Veronica Belmont, amazing, and great alignment with what you're thinking. Lindsay Campbell, amazing, great alignment with what you're thinking.
I'll give you one that's hard to get to, but in a different way. We work with GE. Their CMO, the global CMO, Beth Comstock, a powerhouse. I mean, she is impossible to get to, but she's paying attention enough to our space. She was here this weekend that's a really brilliant mind there.
Yeah, Beth is amazing.
I'd add to that a couple. I'd add Brandy Barker and Soraya Darabi.
Yeah, Soraya is very...
Soraya, hardworking people in that space. All right, does that satisfy you?
And I'm kind of girly, so I'm interested.
Right.
Yeah, also, I would just say real quick afterthought on that is don't limit yourself to female advisors necessarily. If you don't have to have your advisor profile replicate your customer profile.
Yeah.
You know what that is, real quick, and I'm sorry, but the guy who built all the boy bands that girls loved, Backstreet and NSYNC, was a fat fucking 40-year-old white dude, right? And so, like, it's, it doesn't have to be the demo that you're trying. I think you're absolutely right, but that's true. That's who it was, right? That Perlman fucker. Right. So he went to jail. He's a bad dude.
Yeah, he's in jail right now.
Yeah, I think that's super right.
I just love my dad's gonna go do a Google search on the word fuck, and I'm gonna come up because I'm sitting next to you. This is great.
Being transcribed. Hey, hold on back there for just 1 second. We have a question come in from outer space. JMac of Earth is his Twitter handle, and it says, "Are you guys out of touch with the real world trying to get started?" And I think it's a valid question. Like, is this some sort of super panel bullshit, or is it like these are tried and true formulas for kicking ass?
Yeah.
I think these are tried and true formulas in a very specific domain, which is venture-funded startups.
Got it.
So I'm not sure.
Fair.
But the one thing that we didn't spend a lot of time talking about is the product. And you mentioned earlier, the product's got to be great. If the product's great, you can do this. It's not easy.
None of this matters if your business or your product or you suck.
Yeah, and you don't have to go get this thin list part, this thin group, involved. You know, it doesn't have to be Kevin Rose and Veronica Belmont and Tim Ferriss and Gary Vee. You know, it can be, there's a ton of people. It can be very impactful to your business. Our ecosystem, our community is very large with a lot of people that are, you know, that are moving up.
Yeah,
right?
I would also say this just real fast, that this is just an additional toolkit that has evolved because of people who are innovating by creating this type of model, like Tony. The vast majority of startups do not have advisors, and it's not necessary. But this is hopefully an option that people can consider.
Yeah, and you know, we got one of the pioneers up here. Okay, we're going back to you in the corner there, please.
Hi, I'm Rob Rawson from staff.com, similar to Odesk and Elance, except only full-time work. So my question is, for the advisors that we've been approaching at the moment, they're talking about 0.5 to 1%. And I wanted to get your perspective on how do we approach them and say, no, we actually want to give 0.1%. You know, how do we...
Exactly.
Like that.
You need somebody who's first to the party. I mean, Tony can talk to this, but like I would not do a 0.1% deal if I'm the only person at the party.
Yeah.
That's like showing up, you know, it's just... you need to have, you need to assemble a group in that particular case of people who respect each other and who
And
want to
sometimes,
work
by the
with
way,
each other.
somebody does deserve a 0.5. I think that, I mean, there's clearly businesses that, Tim and I are in a lot of different things together, and we sure see a lot of similar stuff, and it's very easy for me to understand, even though I like to think I'm so great, wow, Tim really probably deserves 0.5, and I deserve 0.1.
Or vice versa. So I would say that you don't want to overpay, obviously, but you don't want, if you find the perfect candidate for, let's say, VP of engineering, you're going to pay them what you need to pay them to get them if they're the right fit. And I think you should look at advising similarly. You certainly have to do your homework, but
There's also
Tony may
one
have
other thing
others.
real
Sure,
quick.
sure, go ahead, Gary.
These two guys have won before. So 0.1
Yeah.
with them is far more interesting than 0.5 with you, who, you know, was like, you know, because you just haven't won before. That's just the truth, right? That's just the truth. And
Actually,
so like,
I have one before, but yeah.
Yeah.
well then, you're a fuckface to not think about giving 1% if you've won before. If you've proved it, don't worry about what we say. Walk in and be like, you're getting 0.1. If you don't want it, fuck you.
I'm a winner, Gary.
Well, the other thing is,
Okay, so hold on.
I'm serious. I'm being really
I would say
serious.
the guys you bring in earlier, the timing, whoever, if you need a couple of those linchpins in early to build out the rest of the board around them, they're obviously going to take a larger piece because they were the ones that took more risk and they were the first ones in the pool.
That's fair. And also, think about, you know, if you approach at Tim, then Tim's probably going to know somebody. You know, so you don't have to do all of the research. I think you need to bust your ass with due diligence. But Tim, like asking the opinion of the people that you bring in is a fantastic way to get a boy band set up. No, I'm just kidding.
But I want to add one more thing, which is, I think it was Henry Ford, someone said, you know, I'll pay whatever you want as long as I can set the terms. And I think that if the simpler you can make it, the less that you outline in terms of responsibilities for them, as long as it vests immediately, when you make the terms exceptionally simple and the expectations extremely clear, I think it makes it a lot easier to get those types of deals done.
That's beautiful. Back to the mic. Thanks, Timmy.
Hi, I just want to give a shout out to Gary for the F-bombs because it's quite entertaining to start off with. So my question is, I'm actually I have a startup, it's very early stage, and we have been, it's called Merge, by the way, merge.us, and we have been looking at angel lists, and my question is, how involved are you, you know, through the online channels to invest, and is that something you would recommend? And if not angel lists, are there other sort of online tools that you guys would recommend?
I think we talked about that in the first part of this thing. It's really about doing legwork and understanding who,
A lot of people
what
are using angel lists though.
Right,
A lot.
angellist.co,
That's fair.
isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just
Everybody, a
curious.
lot of people are.
Yeah,
Are you on it? Are you any of you guys on it?
For me personally, an email from these guys, I'm so head down from an advice. You know, this is what, you know, he's on VC. I can't talk for Tim, but he's always head down creating something. I'm so head down, I'm not actively looking for deals, so I'm not.
Right, but if someone were to contact you through...
No, I haven't.
so,
I have
okay.
not been. You know, the network, but getting a I mean, these two sending me an email. You texted me about a deal. It was like 2 in. I heard, you know, I'm insane, so I heard the little buzz. I'm like, what? And then it was a deal from him, and I was like, in. Like, you know, so I think the equity of the people in the ecosystem that I've played with matters much more to me than a platform. But for a lot of people that are just starting out, it's a good platform.
Listen, AngelList though, I just want to underscore, AngelList is super important Let's
I
not
agree.
be fooled.
I think they're gonna win.
I haven't done a deal through Angel List, right? And I'm on there, and I'm actually, it's not a great way to reach me. But for you having a company, trust me, all the other entrepreneurs and people looking for jobs, they're looking on Angel List.
Agreed.
You got to be active on Angel List.
Right, because it's the best
You
way
have
to
a
find
company.
what the people are interested
That's
in.
right.
You
It may-
tag the person's interest and what their market is,
Bingo.
and then you can quickly find that person. That's
Bingo.
I think that's really relevant based on the question that came in from outer space about are we living in a world, well, it's highly, highly networked. These guys are pinging each other at 2 in the morning. I think that's a great opportunity for you. You can find a good match there. Next question on the mic. We've just got a couple minutes left here.
Hi,
so.
Larry Smith from the 6-Word Memoir Project. And I wanted to get back to Tim's comment about the toolkit. Is there a book or a blog or a Twitter feed, and perhaps not a bunch of you have written best-selling books about this stuff, that you look to that gives anyone that open toolkit?
I don't know of anything.
You know, there is a book I would suggest. Tony, you would be able to correct me if I'm wrong here. It was Brad Feld. It was Venture Deals. Is that?
Brad Feld?
Yeah.
Yeah, Venture Deals. So there's a book. Now, this might seem really boring, but
Brad's a genius.
Yeah, no, Brad is very, very smart, a venture capitalist. But Venture Deals will at least outline the different deal points and terminology used in many of these types of contracts. And as you look at each of those deal points, you can see how they could be tweaked or innovated or applied in different ways. I would, if you are ever going to get venture financing or looking at doing something with a similar deal structure, then I would absolutely look at that book. It's the only book of its kind that I've seen that's reasonably up to date and very sharp.
Beautiful. We're over time. I'm going to take one more question because this group
Hey,
all
one other
gives a
book
little
is
bit more.
Reid Hoffman's The Startup of You.
Yeah.
Fantastic book.
Great recommendation, Tony. Okay, one more question.
All right, hi. I'm Vitor from Gauss, the People Magnet. We're a bootstrap startup out of the EU, and this may sound as a stupid question with this networked global world and everything, but we are just a bunch of hackers, and we're considering taking on some advisors. I'd like to know what you guys think about American or international advisors as opposed to advisors that are EU-based and close and around.
It doesn't matter.
Global,
Doesn't matter.
baby.
Doesn't matter.
I agree.
Skype,
Good to hear.
IRC, all that stuff, all
Yeah,
good.
doesn't matter.
All right.
Thank you guys for coming.
Please join
Thank
me
you.
in giving a
Thanks,
round of
guys.
applause to these guys. Thank